Now you may be wondering how I got here. It all begins with a Discord user known as Ancient Old Man. He sent me a link which led to a search term that led to a download link to a Minecraft mod, which led to me apparently being a fallen angel from heaven, and I was dropped down to earth to accomplish a few tasks. I had to visit 7 different hostile dimensions and kill the 24 overpowered bosses that rule them. And not just that. I was going to speedrun it, and do it in 100 Minecraft days. This is one of the most modded experiences out there in Minecraft, with over 200 mods, thousands of quests to do, many new mobs and environments, and hundreds of custom items to obtain. And this got intense. Can I become overpowered enough to kill everything before time runs out? We shall find out now. Without further ado, it was time to kill 24 bosses in 100 days. Anyways, back to the beginning sequence. Immediately after spawning in, the effects of all the mods kick in. Tools and crafting tables are now more quote-unquote realistic, and the furnace now requires smelted iron which can only be obtained from a furnace, which creates a timeline-destroying paradox. But do not fear. Due to all the mods there are now about 20 different ways to smelt items without furnaces. In fact, the entire progression up to early game can be very confusing to follow. But you only need to know 3 things for now. Number 1. Exploring the terrain and cave generation is more rewarding than in normal Minecraft. Resources, of which there are a few hundred different types, are very easy to find if you bother to look around. But the real deal are the caves, which are overall bigger than normal and covered in free stuff to mine. Luckily there was a big deep cave next to spawn, so after spending some time mining coal and iron, it was time to use the only available way right now of smelting items. By combining coal and yellow dye, which is a hot color according to art school, you can light the coal on fire due to this hot color, and throw some iron onto it to burn it into ingots. This unlocks the furnace which skips having to burn iron the old-fashioned way. But the furnace wasn't convenient enough. The second thing to know is that there is always a better way to do something you are currently doing. Similarly to how there are 30 different ways to cook an egg in real life, each with varying success. There are 20 different ways to smelt items in this game, each with varying success. You may think that this furnace is the best and most successful way to smelt items. But think again. After crafting a tool called the excavator, and excavating several stacks of gravel, clay and sand, I built the materials needed to build a smeltery, which is basically a furnace but bigger and better. It is a customizable area that consumes lava to melt ores into molten material liquid, which can then be casted into any material shape you need it to be, including a pickaxe head material. But it does not end there. It can also mix different molten materials into one alloy, which includes obsidian. By pouring water and lava into this smeltery, it will turn into molten obsidian. No need to use diamond pickaxes to get obsidian. But instead of casting 100% obsidian into a pickaxe mold, you can cast a 28% obsidian, 28% aluminum, and 44% iron mixture into a pickaxe. With these specific numbers you get a strong pickaxe that can mine obsidian without having to use a diamond pickaxe. But how do I know this? The answer is the quest book. Due to all the progression you have to do to beat the challenge, you have to follow the quest book, which guides you through the confusing mess that is modded. Which brings us to number 3. To balance out the massive amounts of resources found in the world, progression needs massive amounts of items. And to balance both out, there is a game feature called vein mining. If you were to press this key located on your keyboard while you break a block, every block of the same type next to it will be broken at the cost of lots of tool durability and hunger. But it saves a lot of time. And time is money. This feature can also be used to mine stacks of obsidian in just a minute. So after mining precisely 81 obsidian, I compressed it into one doubly compressed obsidian, which will be used for an extremely sharp totem cutting knife. But where are the totems, you may ask? Be patient. because everything you've seen so far is just the vanilla stuff. Here's where the real stuff begins. It is here that we encounter the first boss, Baycock, an evil skeleton spirit who severely hates humans and is also a connoisseur of archery. But unlike every other evil villain who hates everything, he simply does not come to the main character, which is me, out of nowhere. You have to purposely summon him for him to appear. But how to summon him, you may ask? Here's how, I said. You need to perform a Minecraft ritual. To perform this ritual I will need a ritual totem, which is what this tool here is for. But that's just one part of the ritual. I would also need some ritual instruments to play in order to cause enough noise to awaken the boss. Because after all, a quiet totem does not do anything. And these instruments include all of this. Now I will explain how to obtain all of them. Just kidding. Let's skip to the interesting part of the gaming footage. The ritual to summon the boss, also known as Totentons, which translates to Totentons, requires you to simultaneously play about 6 instruments. And the ritual begins by banging on some wind chimes and then blowing this flute, which is followed by spamming as many instruments as humanly possible and hitting those 256th notes to reach the amount of noise required to annoy the boss so much that he appears out of nowhere to strangle you and cause your untimely death. It's kind of similar to popular rhythm game Geometry Dash. When the noise bar is fulfilled, you are given 3 seconds to get out of here before Baycock materializes. But did you really think I would fight him the normal boring way? Psych! By using the boss's bad pathfinding to my advantage, I lured Baycock into a trap I made earlier and poured lava on top of him until he reached half health. Because I didn't want his drops to become molten. This lava trolling led to his health being dropped to about a quarter of the health bar, so I began punishing him with my diamond sword. However, he was more skilled than I originally thought, constantly hitting MLG after MLG on me. So I left halfway through the fight to go get a little snack to heal up. Then I went back to finish the job. After hitting him from a super secret hiding area, Baycock now rests 6 feet deep. 23 bosses left to go. And it was day 12. If I wanted to complete the challenge I would have to pick up the pace. And this will be done in the next 2 quest lines. Speaking of quests, you may be wondering why I keep getting random stuff seemingly out of nowhere throughout the playthrough. That is because completing quests in this game will reward you with certain items. And while that was useful, most of the grind has to be done by yourself. Speaking of grind, I am on the grind to obtain Graham's amount of subscribers. Would you please join me in this new sub goal? Thank you. Anyways, back to the game. The result of killing Baycock is that you will unlock several new technologies in the progression. By using the blood spilled from Baycock, you can obtain the Blast Furnace and Coke Furnace, which would use up a lot of resources mined up from the cave explorations and quite a lot of casting, as well as a mixture of your blood and the boss blood. But how to get blood? By standing in the smeltery and becoming molten, you become blood meatballs. After several deaths worth of blood, and then building the furnace materials, and building the furnaces from the furnace materials, it was done. I put coal into the coke oven to burn it into coke, which is shoved into the blast furnace with iron to create steel. And after doing this, I invented steel, which is the first step in a chain of increasingly stupid machines leading up to the second boss, but most importantly, the slime sling and slime boots, which basically allow you to fly. But we have to actually do everything in between to get it. So it was time to get it. By pounding ingots into small plates, you can use them to create basic machines. Too bad they don't run if you don't have electricity. So the first option for electricity was to create a water wheel and have a waterfall to turn the wheel to make kinetic energy to make electrical energy from the wheel. But this energy is useless if you don't use it for something. So I made something. It was called the metal press. To connect the metal press to the water wheel I used some wires, but they aren't insulated, so touching them will throw you back with the power of 1000 volts. So now my base was a bit hard to get across. Anyways, by using the metal press to make even more plates, I upgraded the blast furnace so it would spit out steel at an extremely fast rate. With all this newfound steel, I spent quite some time to make some bigger and better machines such as the crusher, the industrial squeezer, 4 new coke furnaces, yet another blast furnace, a new water wheel for more kinetic energy for more electric energy for energy, and a crap ton of wires to use the energy, leading to my base becoming a hazardous no-man's zone. And here's how all the machines work. With the massive amounts of coke from these 4 ovens, you can crush them, and then squeeze them, and then cook them, and then design them, to make 3 black rods which will be useful later. But that's not all the stuff I need. After bridging around all the deadly lasers just to reach the metal press to make even more rods and plates, I began using those materials to make the materials to make this final machine. The big furnace, which costs a little over 2 stacks of steel and more. It was the result of all the products of the machines I built so far. By installing the black rods in the big furnace, it will activate, allowing you to create industrial slime. By smelting slime balls along with salt, clay, pork and beef in the big furnace, you get this brown meatball. With 4 of these meatballs you can create the slime sling and slime boots. The slime sling launches you hundreds of blocks in one direction while the slime boots make you bounce off of any surface and maintain your speed. The best part is they have infinite durability. But while all of that was going on, I was doing a little trolling elsewhere. And it all begins with getting some wild root which comes from killing tall grass. Fortunately this aforementioned wild root is plantable and farmable, because we will need a lot of it. After headshotting the first wild root with the bow inherited from Baycock, I created the pyre from this headshotted root. The pyre is basically a barbecue that crafts stuff we need for later items. But we can't use it if we do not have the stuff to craft stuff. So I began a hunt for several rare plants and ores found around the world. And I searched for the following items: 9 amethyst, 9 sugar, crushed petals, lily pads, moss, 1 melon, 1 beetroot, 1 lilac, and some magenta object. By throwing all of these items together on a pyre, you can make a special flower called the Pereskia. But that's only one step of the process. It was time to go to the Nether to acquire the rest of the rare herbs and spices required to make a rare plant called the stalactite. Speaking of Nether, the next 2 bosses, known as the Scorcher King and the Wither, will be summoned from drops in the Nether. However, I was too busy to do that because I was collecting some mushrooms, leucus spores, orange mushrooms, magma cream, agave, magma flower seeds, wild wheat, wild wood trees, green stalagmite, and runestone, to make the stalactite. After planting the stalactite to make much more stalactite, I shoved all of that into the big furnace along with some skins from various animals and glucose, to make industrial grade leather. Putting 14 of these together will result in you making a hang glider, which will be very useful for traversing the Nether, which is littered with poisonous eggplants, edgy Minecraft skins, explosive fire bats, and more. And I could now just fly away from all my problems. But the final thing to do before the second boss was to make diamond armor and to craft this overpowered sword that looks like a purple butcher knife. So I mined these rare blue and yellow minerals in the Nether, which I melted to combine into an alloy called this purple alloy. By casting it into 2 rods, 1 heavy plate, and 1 sword edge, you can combine them to make the overpowered sword. The manual and cleaver. Now I could have just used a diamond sword, but this cleaver has the special ability of dropping wither skeleton skulls from almost every wither skeleton. And you know what that means. So to recap, I now had a way of launching myself hundreds of blocks in an instant, and I had one of the most powerful weapons for now. So even though it costed about 25 days, I was now ready to take on the Nether and the second and third bosses. The second boss, which is the King of Scorchers, is summoned from a hot 4-leaf clover object which is obtained from crafting 8 purple blaze and this sword together. The purple blaze is dropped from the Scorchers, which spawn rarely on flat Nether terrain. They are basically blazes, but they fire projectiles non-stop, which was too deadly for now. To prepare for scorcher farming, I catapulted myself into a nearby nether fortress and proceeded to kill 9 blazes, which I made into a brewing stand to brew some fire resistance, which reduced the deadly scorcher attacks to the equivalent of a slight tickle. After smashing some lapis blocks on the cleaver, you can enchant it with looting without having to use a looting enchantment book. With that out of the way, I flew and bounced aimlessly around the nether for a while to pursue the scorchers, which were a bit easy to find since they make a lot of noise and stand out in the background like Thanos in a Fruit Loops bowl. After searching for a few days and assassinating about 8 scorchers, I combined the purple blaze into the hot 4-leaf clover object, which, when right-clicked, will abruptly hatch into the stack of 10 red owls sitting on top of each other who calls himself the King of Scorchers. This thing has over 1000 health, which is 3 times the Wither health, and fire resistance will not save you from the Scorcher King, which deals far more damage than the Wither as well. So here was the plan. I went to a closed surface in the nether and made a boxing ring around it, except instead of doing boxing, I trapped the King of Scorchers in the ring and equipped my boomerang for the next part. I was now going to poke the King of Scorchers to death. After touching the Scorcher King in the behind about 500 times, he decided he had enough and dropped dead. After opening the quote-unquote boxing ring, I picked up his drops, which comprised of 4 Fury Fire and a trophy. After hanging this trophy on top of some random tree somewhere, I used the Fury Fire and 5 gold blocks to create the Golden Fury, which has infinite durability and uses gold nuggets as ammo to shoot bullets that deal 30 damage. You have no idea how overpowered this is. It is perhaps one of the greatest ranged weapons of all time. Therefore I will be using this through the rest of the playthrough. And I used it to beat the Wither. After beheading some Wither skeletons with my cleaver, I went to some random place a few hundred blocks from my base and invented the Wither. I accidentally built it next to a village and the Wither proceeded to slaughter whoever lived in this house, but I drew the Wither's attention by shooting stuff at him, causing him to become enraged at me. Fortunately the slime boots give way better movement than walking on feet, so I was able to juke him easily by bouncing all over the place. After having an epic gunfight with the Wither and dealing the final blow, the Nether Star was mine. And this is used for something, which I will show later. Now that the Wither was 6 feet deep, it was time to locate the Elder Guardian. To prepare for this I brewed some water-breathing potions and milked some cows to counter the minor fatigue effect from the Guardians. After spending a few days and searching about 2 whole oceans, I stumbled upon some things along the way. As it turns out, Guardians can spawn randomly in the ocean without a monument. So I did a submarine battle with them to obtain their useful prismarine shards. I also found a pirate ship, so I assassinated those on board and looted their loot, which turned out to have more ammo. There were also some king crabs on various beaches I found, which I eliminated to obtain these pellets, which would be useful later. Finally, after 2 long days, I stumbled upon the monument. I went downstairs and dug straight into the Elder Guardian room. The following footage or true events. Mission accomplished. But while the last 2 boss fights were actually kind of normal, the next several bosses would not be as straightforward. It was time to head to the new modded dimensions to seek out the later game bosses. Accessing Erebus requires some advanced technology that was too complex for now, as well as an activated magical snow globe, which is made from the Nether Star and prismarine shards, and a few other steps I won't get into now. On the other hand, reaching the Twilight Forest only needs the Twilight Rock, which is a lot less painful to make. So it was time to go to the Twilight Forest first. The Twilight Forest is home to 9 different bosses, each living in different biomes and different structures. The first boss was a giant snake who calls himself the Naga. But I had no idea where it was. So I made a magical map from various Twilight Forest cave berries and raven feathers, which is capable of telling me where every boss was located. As I bounced my way northwest, I decided I would try to drown the Naga in lava because I was curious to see what would happen, which failed epically. After reaching the residence of the Naga snake, he simply swam above the lava and nearly escaped his house, but he kept ramming into walls probably because he could not see where he was going, since his face was on fire. So my plan unsuccessfully worked. While the Naga was confused, I blasted golden nuggies into its head until it collapsed. And the unfortunate death of the Naga unlocks the next boss, which is the Twilight Lich, who lives at the tippy top of this extremely tall tower, which can be found quite easily on this magical map. After pulling up to the Naga house and scaling the skyscrapers using the sling and some extra blocks, I broke and entered into the final tower, and climbed up all these stairs to meet the Lich at the top. The thing is, the Lich is quite shy and unwilling to meet people face to face, so he creates two illusions that will shoot you down with very deadly stuff. After battling with the Lich for a few minutes, I made the realization that these two guys were just illusions and I was dealing no damage. The real guy was hiding downstairs this whole time. I was furious. After bouncing all of his attacks back onto him, his shield disabled, and in one final desperate attempt, he began swarming the tower with some armored guards to save himself. But no matter. I just sniped him from a safe distance. After collecting his drops, I jumped down from the tower and did a massive bounce on the way to my next target. A location called the Mean Mushroom Labyrinth. And this labyrinth is guarded by some mad mushroom cows, mad enough to charge straight into you from the back, causing fatal injury. But I have a trick up my sleeve. I used a lava bucket to stop everything that went for me, which was surprisingly effective. But even when I missed, some mushrooms charged right into the lava even though they had a lot of time to react to the lava being placed. Other mushrooms just began tap dancing after blocking them from me with the lava strat, so I ignored them. After a while of navigating this maze, I made it to the boss room, which has one giant mushroom cow holding an axe. Now this sounds like no problem, but there was a problem. The boss was on impact client. He hit me from tens of blocks away and through multiple walls. But nothing stops the grind. After dodging his axe swings and then using guerrilla tactics on this giant cow, he dropped dead, which unlocks the next boss in this dimension, the Hydra. While the Mushroom Labyrinth was located on the edge of the Twilight Swamp biome, the Hydra is located deeper into the swamp. As you get closer, the land gets hotter and lava lakes appear everywhere. Right in the center of this fire swamp is a cave where the Hydra lives, and he was angry. Nearly all of the time, at least one of its three heads was shooting fire at me, but hitting heads with open mouths deal more damage than hitting heads that are just being bystanders. After several close calls with getting roasted to death, and after a while of shooting right down the throats of the Hydra while it was spitting fire, the Hydra passed away, leaving behind a Hydra trophy, a sign that you have killed the Hydra. And this trophy will be used to unlock the Phantom Dungeon, located on the edge of the Dark Forest. After locating this courtyard and placing the trophy down at this entrance podium, the floor opened up and I dropped into a stronghold filled with goblin guys. But I simply flew past them since the grind does not wait for anyone. The room I am looking for is this basement dining room that you have to break into, which awakens the phantom spirits once you enter. And it was a 7v1. But with the Golden Fury, I counted as 70 people. If you simplify the denominators you get 1v10. Which was pretty good. After gunning down the spirits one by one, and collecting their stuff, I was allowed to go deeper into the Dark Forest, where the ground and leaves turn weird. And this is where I found a huge tower. And at the top of this, was the Yorgast boss. Now this tower works differently than the Lich Tower. It's filled with spawners and contraptions and puzzles. But I had no time for all this tomfoolery. After launching myself through all this nonsense, and then encountering a locked door and banging on it for some time, I decided I had enough with these useless puzzles, and I broke the doorway, accidentally taking half of the building along with it since I had Vein Miner on. After walking around the locked doorway, which was still standing, I catapulted myself up the Yorgast tower until I finally reached the boss arena. Now this boss is one of the most complicated fights in the game. Phase 1 of the boss begins with the Ghast spitting balls down at you, which you deflect back at it to damage it. Sounds easy enough, right? If only Phase 1 lasted forever. In Phase 2, the Ghast cries tears that will break your helmet instantly, and damage you, so it is of top priority to build ceilings wherever you go so you don't get cried on. While the Ghast is crying, the only way to damage it is to use these lasers on the side of the arena, which I protected with ceilings obtained from breaking the previous tower. To charge these lasers, you have to wait for thunder to strike it, since the thunder spawns these little Ghastlings. Killing the Ghastlings fuel these lasers, and once it's at full capacity, you wait for the Ghast to come your way, and then you go boom and explode and then damage. After doing this a few times, the Ghast went up and exploded in an unpleasant explosion, leaving behind its possessions which levitated in this specific area. Opening this Ghast luggage caused me to obtain the fiery tears that were cried by the Ghast. A sign of killing the Ghast. After jumping off this building, I bounced my way towards the frozen forests, where the Alpha Yetis and Snow Queen live. The Alpha Yeti lives inside an ice cave on the edge of the snow forest, but the Alpha Yeti was not so alpha after all, since he was no match and lasted shorter than a W boson. Killing this Alpha Yeti unlocks the massive glacier at the center of the snow forest, and on top of this huge glacier was the Aurora Tower. Quite a sight to see. After scaling this tower and jumping up a flight of icy stairs, I met the Ice Queen in this frozen arena, but she had no time for meetings. She was flying in a bowl of impenetrable ice, which is simply not possible to hit through. But that gave me an idea. What if I drowned the Snow Queen in lava? Since lava was the opposite of ice. It makes sense, right? Apparently not. Because the Snow Queen takes no damage whatsoever in molten material, and instead only produces a sick beat, which is the sound of the lava damage constantly being deflected by the ice bowl. My plan was foiled. So I did plan B, which was killing the Snow Queen normally by constantly doing headshots. Finally, with the Snow Queen, Ghast, and Hydra 6 feet deep, the giant boss fight was unlocked. The giant lives in a house made of giant blocks on top of a giant cloud, which is a giant distance above the ground. After locating the giant's house on the forest map, and building my way up to challenge the giant, I recalled the old tale of Jack and the giant beanstalk. The way Jack killed the giant in the old days was he lured the giant down a pathway, and then chopped the pathway down while the giant was still on it, causing the giant to fall to his death. And I had an idea. I was going to lure the giant out on a wooden bridge and then use Vein Miner to drop the giants to their death without having to fight them. Unfortunately, the game does not give you any reward for cheesing the fight like this. So I just 1v1'd another giant normally to actually get the drop from this boss fight, which was the giant pickaxe. With the giant pickaxe in my hand, I dropped down into the Twilight Forest caves, where I located a structure called the Giant Obsidian Vault. By using the pickaxe to dig inside, you can find a chest holding the Lamp of Cinders, the final loot item of the Twilight Forest. And this item will be used to enter the next dimension, Atum. To enter Atum, you need to craft an item called the Scarab. Now that I had pilfered the Lamp of Cinders from the Obsidian loot crate, I smoked it and then used it to obtain the Scarab. Next, I built a portal out of sandstone and water, and threw the Scarab inside to activate it. After jumping inside this pool, I found myself in a desolate wasteland inhabited by a more powerful type of blaze called the Basalt, and with unfriendly warriors that will kill players on sight. And we were going to be stuck here for a while, since there are several things to do in this dimension. Number 1 was killing the Pharaoh boss, which can be located at the bottom of these pyramids. Too bad that these pyramids were unbreakable and impossible to dig into. Entering these pyramids requires you to dig down the side to find a hidden underground doorway, which leads into a spawner room which can be easily dodged. The next trial was a tight labyrinth filled with poison traps and fire traps, which can be disabled by right-clicking them. With every tight corner you turn, there is a chance you will walk right into something with no warning, and find yourself poisoned and on fire simultaneously. Or poisoned. After a while of wandering around and finding a flight of ladders going deeper, you find yourself in the tomb rooms, filled with even more traps and several chambers, one of which contains a sarcophagus, which is the resting place for the pharaoh. But this resting place can be turned into the opposite, which is awakened, by placing 4 royal torches next to it to summon the boss. Now it was important to disable all the traps on this floor before summoning the boss, which I learned the hard way. The pharaoh boss was more intelligent than your average zombie or villager, and it will chase you down to the ends of the world. I tried to escape it, which led to me running into a few quadrillion undisabled traps, and I almost died. It can open doors, which I learned the hard way. It does not take knockback, which I learned the hard way. And it summons lots of helpers, which I learned visually. After desperately trying to block myself off from the awakened pharaoh so I could heal, I did it. At the last minute I saved myself by blocking the hallway. Then I just killed him from behind this blockade. Once you annihilate the pharaoh, you will find his possessions in the sarcophagus, which will contain some special weapons or armor. Now you have to raid 2 pyramids since you need 2 pieces of pharaoh equipment for items later in the game. Once I did that, the second order of business was finding a sphinx. And do not worry. There is no boss or anything. You just need to collect this sphinx item. Once that was done, the third thing to do was to find crashed meteorites, which are big black rocks in the ground that contain a chest of alien technology in the center, which I will need for later. The final thing to do was to go underground and find these brown choco puff ores, which drop several items, aka relics, that can be washed in water for valuable items, which will be used in the final part of this final step, which was to find the Sunkeeper Tower, inhabited by Sunkeepers. By trading the relics with them you get some gold coins, which can be traded back to them so that they level up and unlock more trades. The trade I'm looking for is the enchanted golden date trade, but this was ridiculously rare to unlock and took a cosmically large amount of trading to finally find. But I got it. Now with all the special loot obtained from the various journeys in this dimension, I made this mini figurine, which will be needed to access the Iceika dimension, which I will do at the end of this vid. But I have skipped several important dimensions due to this mini adventure in Atum. One of which was Erebus. Traveling to Erebus requires this key, which needs 10 million energy to create. Something that a water wheel simply cannot do. So it was time for a better generator. More specifically, the biodiesel generator. A structure on the same level of costliness as the big furnace, requiring 2 stacks of steel and over 4 stacks of processed coal. So while all the coal was roasting, here's a quick explanation of how to set the generator up. First I would need a gigantic source of plants since the biodiesel generator consumes a huge amount of plants, hence the name biodiesel generator, with the prefix bio meaning biology which is plants. So how do we get all the plants needed to fuel the generator? Then I had an idea. Earlier in this playthrough while I fought the Wither, I stumbled upon a house made entirely of hay bales. As it turned out, these hay houses are everywhere. And I could harvest them for free wheat. So after making some random farmer's house disappear into my inventory, I grinded them into wheat. Now here's how to turn wheat into fuel. First I built 2 new machines called the Industrial Fermenter and the Industrial Refinery. By turning half of the wheat into seeds, and putting the seeds into the squeezer, and putting the remaining wheat into the fermenter, you get equal amounts of plant oil and ethanol. Then you use the refinery to create biodiesel from mixing plant oil and ethanol, which can now be used to fuel the fuel generator. But be warned, this machine is extremely loud. So I constructed the generator very far away from the base, along with the big furnace since the furnace was the only thing that consumed this much energy. And while all this was going on in the middle of nowhere, I was doing a little trolling somewhere else. So far we've only been working with vanilla type materials. But here's where the technology gets real. While energy from biodiesel is cool and all, it is also used for charged osmium. This material, along with some steel, is used to make the first tier of machine casing, which unlocks a new tier of technology. And while there are many new machines to choose from, the only two we need for now are the infuser and compressor, which I created and then placed next to the generator in the middle of nowhere. So basically, the infuser is simply a more convenient way to create steel. But it is more than just a steel making machine. It does other, weird stuff. A lot of weird stuff. There are too many game mechanics to explain from this phase in my plan, so I will just give you the main idea. By mixing up to 4 or more normal materials together, you can get circuits and some other oddities, such as an alloy made from molten ender pearls, molten redstone, molten glowstone, and silver. With these advanced materials, which includes a quartz redstone mixture, an obsidian glowstone osmium mixture, and blah blah and so on, I made this item called the Eye of Gia, which is not useful, aka useless. For it to be useful, you have to smelt it with the molten ender pearl glowstone redstone silver ingots with 10 million energy. An energy cost that only the generator could keep up with. So after churning the remains of the wheat farmer's house into juice to produce several tons of biodiesel, I fed it all into the generator while the Eye of Gia was being barbecued. And after 2 long minutes, it was finally done. The Eye of Gia turned into an awakened one. And it was all mine. After all this complex blah 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 and way too many trolling, I could travel to Erebus by using the awakened eye. Now that we were in Erebus, there were a few new things to accomplish. But in case you are unfamiliar with Erebus, you do not need to be familiar with it. It is one of the worst dimensions of all time. Imagine the Nether, except 5 times more untraversable, untravelable, and deadly. It is filled with acid pools, invisible traps, lava rivers, huge spiders for all the arachnophobes out there, and other stuff that triggers at least 20 other phobias. But the grind does not stop for any phobias. After wandering around this underground jungle for a bit, I stumbled upon a volcanic desert biome, where the first 5 bosses in this cursed dimension are, namely, such as, the Antlion boss, and the 4 golem bosses that defend the temple that the aforementioned Antlion boss lives in. Not to mention that it is buried underground and requires a bit of searching to discover. After walking and flying and sprinting around the desert for a while, I finally found a huge pyramid sticking out of the ground. And that's the temple, which is surrounded by a huge labyrinth, with each corner having 1 golem boss. The first golem I encountered was this yellow dude, who wasn't even in the corner. He was running in a confused circle in the middle of a random hallway, and in his state of dementia, I could take him down easily. But each golem has varying physical skills. And the next golem was not as easy to defeat. The white golem was found after I was strolling down this other hallway, which led to a car chase where I had to avoid falling into lava or running into cobwebs. This looked like it was going to end badly, but due to bad pathfinding, the golem started doing the Gangnam Style dance, allowing me to get a clear shot on him. And as I was going between each corner of the maze, I decided I had enough with navigating mazes for this entire playthrough, so I just painstakingly dug through the walls to get to the boss, which I could tell the location of because the journey map very subtly tells you where it is. And I found the penultimate golem after poking a hole in the maze. This was followed by me poking the boss through this window repeatedly, while he attempted to poison me through this hole. After one final spanking, he passed away, and I picked up its drops. Speaking of drops, each golem boss drops 1 pizza roll that represents their color, which I will need to unlock the pyramid at the center of this maze. The last pizza roll I needed came from the final living golem, which was the mud golem. I accidentally found this mud golem after doing a spider unboxing, after which the golem charged right at me. But there is no problem that a hallway blockade cannot fix. Except the golem was 1 level of intelligence higher than the pharaoh, and tore through my walls to charge at me. But after a close battle, I was victorious. After going back to the center and placing these pizza rolls at the top of the pyramid opens and you are dropped into a password chamber where you have to enter in 4 specific items: exoskeleton, magma cream, string, and magma spider eyes. After you solve those security questions, you are granted access to the basement of the pyramid, which is the culmination of everything I have done so far. It is where the Antlion boss resides. And it was very mad. I could tell because he kept smashing my body against every wall in the multiverse. But for every smash he dealt, I landed 3 counter smashes on him. After a while of doing this, I drop-kicked him one final time, causing him to flip over and die, leaving behind an egg which would be useful later. After exiting the pyramid and locating a new biome called the Ulterior Outback, which is a fancy way of saying Savannah, the final boss to kill in this dimension is the Tarantula Broodmother. This tarantula mommy resides in a giant pink tree that can be rarely found around this area, which is inhabited and guarded by huge tarantulas crawling everywhere. Just kidding. I could just climb the tree straight into the boss fight with no extra conflict. Now it looks like this Broodmother was a big fan of the Wither, because it copied almost all of its behavior. It was vulnerable to bullets in the first phase and even stole the Wither shield effect, but in the second phase, it got real. So I got real as well. After giving this tarantula a massive beating, it died the Antlion way and left behind yet another egg. Now what are we going to do with all these eggs? Here's what I was going to do with all these eggs. First I went on a hunt for Erebus fossils on the roof of the dimension, and then some temple or in underground caves, and some nice rocks, which spawned in boulders in the volcanic desert. Next I hunted some dragonflies, locusts, flies, chopped down some bamboo, sarcastic check mushrooms, Kaiser finger mushrooms, grandma's toes mushrooms, cat mushrooms, and some amber. By mixing all of these Erebus items together, you get the power egg, which will form the crown of the skies, allowing you to access the third to last dimension in this playthrough, the Aether. Now I think we are all familiar with the Aether portal, which activates once you sacrifice the crown. But once you step inside, things get wild. After walking out you are instantly launched into the air in the middle of nowhere. In fact this dimension is 80% made out of the middle of nowhere, with floating islands all over the place. So after several minutes of hang gliding across these empty lands, I kept a lookout for 3 different structures. The first one is a tunnel extending from the side of an island, which leads to a room with a cube-looking person. Attempting to mine it causes you to awaken whatever the boss was named again, which is only damageable with pickaxes. This boss will attempt to crush you between the walls, and will fling you all over the place, but its movement was predictable. So predictable that you could just circle it forever. Upon reaching its final bit of health, the boss gets in a condition and goes in circles faster and faster until it collapses into a singularity and dies, dropping the bronze Aether coin. But as you could probably tell by the usage of the word bronze, you can probably tell that there is a silver and gold Aether coin. And that is correct. The silver coin comes from a huge Greek-looking temple floating in the sky, where you find a 3-dimensional labyrinth, since 2-dimensional was not enough. And you can't break through the maze walls like last time. Once you make it to the end of the labyrinth, you shall find the Valkyrie Queen, which you can do small talk with, or challenge to a battle to the death. But you can only challenge her to the death after proving herself to the queen. So I will do that right now, which is done by killing 10 Valkyries. After going back into the labyrinth, you will find normal Valkyries standing still in the doorways of the rooms, which you can then kill to the death for victory medals. Once you battle to the death 10 normal Valkyries and obtain all these victories and medals, the queen decides she has seen enough, and becomes willing to fight. And yes, you can use a normal sword for this fight this time. So after a tedious and epic sword fight, which was underwhelmingly easy, I killed the queen and obtained the silver coin. Now the last coin was the stupidest. First you have to find this rare, nearly perfectly round island high in the sky, which took several days of hang gliding around to find. Luckily the boss fight was easier than locating the boss. In this island lives the Sun King, but he only had 50 health and was quite easy to fight. Just kidding. After a short conversation with him, he turned into his true form, a form which can't be damaged with any weapons, melee or ranged. And this form spits out a multitude of projectiles, namely, fire projectiles that bounce off the walls and explode in your face. But for some inexplicable reason, due to reasons related to plot armor, the Sun King launches ice projectiles, even though this guy was called the Sun King. And the only way to damage the Sun King was by hitting back his ice projectiles at him. Since this guy was literally called the Sun King, it would only make sense if I brought fire resistance, which was extremely helpful since he kept flying over to me and attempting to barbecue me. After missing a few of the ice ball shots but landing about 10 of them, the Sun King was extinguished, and froze to death, leaving behind the golden coin. As the Sun God died, the sun set on the Aether for the first and final time. Another dimension down. 2 more left to go. Now with all of these new currencies I invested in, it was time to combine them into one big, orange coin, which unlocks the Aether altar. But what is the point of this altar if we do not have items to put on the altar? After returning to the Aether, I searched for the materials known as a yellow blob called ambrosia, some purple gems, and rare gravitite ores that spawn near the bottom of the dimension, which led to a few near-death incidents. After the risky gravitite mining operations, I began farming some golden oak trees, blueberry bushes, and milking the poison out of poisonous plants. And similarly to how water evaporates in the Nether, lava cools down in the Aether, into aerogel. By cooking the poison with ambrosia, cooking the berries along with the poison, and cooking the gravitite with the berries with poison, and combining those with the frozen lava stuff, you get this purple whipped cream, which is one part of the recipe to make this useful spicy meatball. The other 2 steps being, using the flowers from the previous desert dimension to make a steel necklace, which you cool in the Aether into ice, which you use to make this precious golden piece of jewelry, which can be used to obtain 16 enchanted golden berries, and 48 of these can be combined into yet another necklace, 2 of them to be exact. With the jewelry, whipped cream, and 18 healing stones from the Aether, this inexplicably fuses into the spicy meatball, which is named the resonating orb, the most powerful item we will get our hands on in this playthrough. And it will unlock the final part of the progression in this mod, where we will travel to the final, 2 most dangerous dimensions in the game. The first one being Iceika. To access Iceika, you have to make a nether portal, except instead of obsidian you use snow blocks, and instead of lighting it with a flint and steel, you light it with the snow globe, which is created from the desert figurine I made earlier. After going through, you find yourself in a dimension inhabited by the blaze, which are basically inverted blazes. Overall, this dimension is basically an inverted nether. And everything freezes you instead of burning you, which hurts 5 times more. These blizz spawn in massive groups that are massively spawned everywhere because the creator of this mod went wild on the spawn rates. There was no hope trying to kill them all. So the best shot was to just dodge them, which was a bit hard due to them being everywhere, or go underground. Speaking of underground, by going underground you can find the ice dungeons, where trolls and bed war bow spammers live, guarding some precious loot chests. These chests contain snowflakes, which may sound not precious at first, but we cannot progress without them. So we had no choice. After being misfortunate enough to dig into a skeleton dungeon without any shield on me, I could only shoot back. Which didn't work as well since there are so many of these guys. But if violence doesn't work, use more violence. After gunning down the entire dungeon, I robbed them of their snowflakes. And then I repeated the process for a few more dungeons. The next step is to find the Iceika village, where these merchants live. After busting down the door on one of these houses, I traded all these stolen snowflakes for the brand new Santa armor set. But did you actually think I was gonna wear it? Here's what I am going to do instead. After stealing some workshop lamps that spawn naturally in this dimension, I deep-fried the Santa armor set with the lamps and frost shards dropped from the bed warbo spammers, to make a Christmas-themed meatball. This meatball can then be grinded and combined with these common materials, to unlock this new powder, which is the base for the next tier of technology. The final tier we will need. However, we will only need 3 of these machines. And it only makes sense that these final machines would be the most expensive. Just kidding. It was just normal. By sprinkling this Christmas meatball powder onto this conglomerate of objects, this can be made into a water wheel, except the water is replaced by you, so you have to turn it yourself. And this U-wheel powers a machine called the Resonator, made from the aforementioned resonating meatball obtained a while back. With the power of the resonating meatball and the power of the Christmas meatball, the 2 items we have worked for this whole time, you can create this differently colored lapis, which unlocks the enchanter and XP bottler, both of which leads to the final machine we will need in this game, the induction smelter. Now you may have noticed I have not gone to the end dimension at all in this game. This is because Eyes of Ender cannot be crafted with your bare hands, which are not powerful enough to create such a thing. Instead they can only be made by cooking blaze powder and ender pearls together in this aforementioned powerful smelter. So I did that 12 times. And that will be the last time we use technology in this playthrough. The rest is self-explanatory. On the second to last day, I killed the Ender Dragon. Finally, the task was done. 24 bosses down in 100 Minecraft days. After about 7 dimensions conquered and several technologies obtained, it was over. Now I could finally rest. Or could I? Because I was lying this whole time. This isn't even the full mod progression. While killing all these bosses allows you to unlock early game in this mod, the real goal of the game is this. There is a lot more to do, including building a giant Minecraft factory to create enough resources to progress into the real mid-game of this game, where you become the most powerful magician and use spells to create stuff that is even more powerful than you. Eventually you can fly to outer space and mine the sun. The Ender Dragon isn't even the final boss. It's this guy who can kill you in creative mode. But will I even do any of these? Maybe. So subscribe and stay tuned for more adventures like this. This was a rather enjoyable experience, and this mod is quite well made in my opinion. So if you want to experience this experience for yourself, the download link is in the description. Anyways, shout out to the channel members and I will probably see you next time.